Hey friends! I'm Grace Ann.
And I'm Andrea.
And we're G&A for today.
We are two best friends living a faith-based lifestyle and
documenting it.
If you haven't already, make sure you follow us on social media. The links will be in the description. We have an Instagram and a Twitter at G&A for today.
We both have personal social media, so follow us there too. Mine will be on the screen, and then Andrea's will be on the screen right there, both in the description below.
Make sure you watch last week's video. We did a vlog of my very first tattoo. So make sure you do not miss that. It's very exciting.
So this week we're going to be talking about Christians in the public school, and we're going to give you all the tips that you need.
So in this video we wanted to give you 10 tips of how to deal with life in public school as a Christian and how to profess your faith without being scared of what others think of you. And we just wanted to let you know that we both went to public school, elementary school, through high school, through graduation. I now go to a private college, which I'd like to make some videos later about the differences between public and private school. But for this video's sake, we're going to talk about being a Christian in public schools. Because it's hard. We've been in your shoes.
Yes.
Sometimes it's rough, but we'd like to give you some tips to help you live out your faith.
Mm-hmm. So we're going to start off with tip number 1. That's 2, but we're only going to give you 1 tip to start with. Tip number 1 is don't care what others think about you. Like, don't worry if people see you and know that you're a Christian and they're like, oh my gosh, she's a Christian? Whoa, weird. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, what people think of you, at the end of the day, when you graduate high school, I'm sure you've heard this before, but you will not remember 95% of the people that you went to school with, unless you're Andrea, because she remembers everything. But you're not going to remember that one day in the 9th grade that someone was like, oh my gosh, she's a Christian, she's weird. Like, that's not, no, people don't care.
And this might be like a dumb tip, like you might think, oh, that's stupid, why did they even bring that up? But it's a big deal. Like, you shouldn't care what others think of you, and it's really hard, so you need to pray about that. And I remember being in high school, we would do Bible studies in the middle of the hallway after school before we had practice. And it wasn't, people wouldn't say, oh, it's so weird that they're Christians. They would just say like little offhand comments and laugh at us and point at us.
Yeah.
And I just remember being so offended, which I don't want y'all to be offended. I want you to just shrug that off and pray for them, and don't let that get to you. Because people are going to have their own opinions about Christianity, and there's nothing you can really do but pray for them.
Yeah.
And also, to tag along with what you said, don't be afraid to read your Bible in public.
Oh yes, this was a big one. I know, especially for me, when we first started going to high school, like our first year of high school, we had kind of like a study hall, I guess, time frame that was like, what, 25 something minutes long. And a lot of times, like, I was such a like OCD student that I would finish all my homework really early, and so like if our teacher had assigned homework for the week, I probably had it done like on Tuesday just because I didn't want to worry about it later, and especially since I was involved in a lot of after school things. So I would spend a lot of my time in study hall, like reading my Bible or like Bible journaling and stuff like that. And when I was like starting to do that, I was really, really anxious about it because we went to a predominantly non-Christian high school, I would venture to say. There's not a lot of church people in our area, and the people that are very judgmental. And so I was really worried that people were going to be like, oh, she's reading her Bible at school, wow, what a nerd. Like, but that's not it at all. Like, I genuinely cared about, and still care, but genuinely cared about my relationship with God and deepening that. And if that was the only time I had during the day, because maybe I had practice later to read my Bible, then I was going to do that then. And you shouldn't feel afraid to do that, because you have a right to read your Bible wherever you want.
Yeah. And tip number 2 kind of goes along with that, but it is to not be afraid to pray. I know that you're going to be eating lunch and stuff at school, and you should not be afraid to pray and bless over your food, because that's an important part of who we are. Prayer is a big part of being a Christian, and you shouldn't be afraid to do that in front of other people. It should actually be a way for people to come, maybe ask you. It could be just a way to set you apart from other people and to start conversations and to witness to them. So don't be afraid to look weird according to society. It's not weird to pray. You should pray.
Yeah, for sure. And don't be afraid to like pray with other people too. Like, if you have a good group of friends that are Christians, like, pray with each other, pray together. We used to hold hands and pray out loud. Yeah. So like, don't be afraid to do that, because like what we're supposed to do. Tip number 3 is we want you guys to know that it's okay to talk about your faith, and it's perfectly okay to talk about that with teachers. Like, I remember growing up, I had some teachers that I was really, really close to in high school, especially, and I would go to them and be like, okay, look, I am struggling with XYZ, and I don't know what to do because I'm a Christian, and I know that I shouldn't be upset about XYZ or whatever, and they would feel free to give me advice on it. And like, don't be afraid to talk to them about that, because your teachers are ultimately the people you spend the most time around when you're in school, and they're gonna know how to talk to you and know your personality, and if you bring it up in conversation, they're more than likely able to talk about it.
And it's also a good way, when you talk about your faith to your teachers, it's a good way to figure out if they're Christians or not. And it will be a good sign to say, hey, maybe I should invite this teacher to church, stuff like that.
Yeah, for sure. But on the flip side of that, some teachers in some counties and states do have regulations on what they can and cannot talk about faith-based with their students. So just know that if they don't respond well to that, it could just be a restriction that, you know, could get them fired or could get them on like a probation type thing at work. So if you do bring it up and a teacher responds negatively to that, don't be discouraged. Know that in some situations that it is just based off of the school system and their rules and regulations.
On to tip number 4 is make sure you invite people to church. When you're in school, you're surrounded by so many people your age, and you're not really going to have that opportunity again where you're just surrounded by so many people all the time. And so you should take advantage of that, and you should invite people to church, because it's a really good way to get to know people and a good way to witness to other people. Because even if they are Christians, they might not be churched, and it's very important for them to be churched. So make sure that you are inviting people to church, especially if they are new to your school, because a lot of times it's hard for families to find churches really quickly. So you should get buddies with them and invite them to church. This also includes teachers, just like we were talking in point number 3. I remember in high school I had a teacher, I persistently asked him if he would go to my church, and he would always be like, oh, maybe, I don't know, but he did, and I was so happy, because honestly, if you're watching this,
shout out to
you, you're the best teacher I've ever had. But honestly, I wasn't sure where his spiritual state was, and so I felt the need to continually ask him to come to church and to be praying for him, and he did, and I just felt like that was an answer to my prayers. So make sure you're not scared to invite your teachers to church, because they're people too.
Yeah, for sure. And when you invite people to church, like, you don't have to just invite them to like a regular Sunday morning service. If you have something special going on at your church, like if you have a cantata or if you have like a special youth event, like you can invite people to those things too, and that's an easy way to do that. You can just be like, hey, by the way, we're having like hot dogs and a cookout, you know, Friday at 5, come over, you know, whatever. And that's an easy way to invite them without being like, want to come to church with me? Because that can be kind of scary.
Some people are more apt to go to like a cookout or a movie night than to like a Sunday morning church.
Yeah, and that's a good way to get them to plug in first, and then they're like, oh, I really like this, and then they start coming. So that's a good way to relationship. Yeah, for sure. Tip number 5 is that if you do not have a student leadership organization that is faith-based, be willing and confident enough to talk to your administration and start one of those. I know when we were going to public school, we had Fellowship of Christian Students, which some cases it'll be Fellowship of Christian Athletes, but ours was for all students, not just athletes. And I know we really benefited from being involved in those types of organizations and being able to gather with a group of like-minded students, and make sure that if you do have things like that, participate in those things. Go to those. Like, if you have free time during school where they allow you to go to these club meetings and stuff, take advantage of that. Like, don't do it just to get out of class, but do it so that you can have a different perspective, because, you know, sometimes they're going to bring people in to talk in those situations that you may have never heard before, and they might be of a slightly different faith background, but they might say something profound to you that you've never heard in your own church before. And if you don't have those types of organizations in your school, feel free to reach out to administration and start those. I'm sure that you have like an assistant principal or a counselor or somebody that can guide you through the necessary steps to establish that type of organization.
But if you want to do that, make sure that you are very persistent, because you might get some people saying, no, maybe not now, or I don't think that's a good idea. But you should continue on in doing that, because it's not going to be easy, and it might not happen in a week. It might happen in a year. So make sure you're persistent in that. On to tip number 6. A lot of people around you, if you are a Christian in a public school, are probably not Christian. And they might have some questions about Christianity and about Jesus. And we just want you to know that it's okay not to have all the answers. It's okay to say, you know what, I'm not sure about that. I'm going to go check with my pastor. I'm going to go check the Bible and see what it says, and I'm going to come back to you. And they should respect that, because you are human and you don't know everything. You should strive to learn more and more about God every day, but you're not going to ever know everything. And if there are people that will ask you questions, you probably don't know all the answers. So it's okay to come back later and with an answer, as long as you don't forget about them and you do actually come back with an answer. But going along with that, whenever you are talking to people about your faith, make sure you're not forcing it upon them and you're not acting like rude, like Christianity, gonna shove it down your throat.
Yeah.
That's rude. Like, we're in America, well, we are, I don't know where you are watching this, but we have the freedom to practice whatever faith we want to, and you shouldn't force your faith upon someone else because they have the freedom. Yes, you should pray for them if they're not Christian, but don't force it upon them, because at the end of the day, it's their decision.
Yeah, and going along with that, like, think about it this way. If they were of a differing faith, you wouldn't want them forcing their ideas and their opinions upon you, because you already know what you believe. And yeah, it's important that you share your faith and that you try and lead people in the ways of the gospel and to the salvation point, but just try not to like force it down their throat. And if they tell you, oh, thanks but no thanks, like I already believe in whatever, then be respectful of that and be like, okay, that's cool, and just pray for them later. You know, try not to force them to listen to what you have to say.
Because you should be able to be their friends even though you don't have the same beliefs. And if you force your opinions upon them, then they're not going to want to be your friend, and they're going to have a negative thought about Christians. So don't do that.
Tip number 7. This is a big one, y'all.
At least it was for us.
Yes. I think it's especially because we're in the South. But, okay. Do not, when you're in a public school setting, do not be church versus church. If you go to, church A that's at the corner of North Main and Johnson Street, whatever. If you go to that church and there's like church B over here that's on South Main and Winston, whatever, like, don't be church versus church. Don't be church A versus church B. Just because you have a group of people over here that go to church B and a group of people over here that go to church A doesn't mean you have to feud with each other. You are all Christians, and especially if you're both Protestant churches, like, you don't have to be the same denomination, but that doesn't mean that this church is any better than this church. You're all serving God and serving Jesus, so do that together. Be like, lift each other up and empower each other. Don't be like, oh, well, they go to church A, they know nothing about what I'm talking about, or, oh, they go to church B, they're fake. Like, no, encourage each other to be good Christians and to live a Christian lifestyle in the public school setting together, and try to get along and show other people that just because we don't agree on the same church, to attend, doesn't mean that we don't hate each other, because we both have the same goal.
Yeah, I feel like when we went to school, there were friend groups depending on what church you went to. Friend group A goes to church A. Friend group B goes to church B. And I felt like there was never actual verbal, oh, I don't like church B, I don't like church A. It was more like a stigma, like, I don't want to talk to you. Or if church B goes to the FCA or whatever, then church A is going to be like, I don't want to go there because all of the students that go there are church B. Like, that's stupid. Don't be like that. You are a Christian. Just live a Christian lifestyle amongst each other. It's important. So going on to tip number 8, this might sound a little cliche, but don't be a hypocrite.
Say it louder for the people in the back.
Don't be a hypocrite. Like, it's so annoying when Christians publicly profess their faith and they're going to church all the time, but then they're acting a different way at school. People are watching you, especially non-Christians. They're going to take note of whenever you mess up. They're going to,
100%.
yeah,
Every time.
They're going to say, oh, if Johnny Sue over here is a Christian, but they cuss up a storm like a sailor, then I can be a Christian and still do that, so that's cool. I'm going to just act like them, and being Christian is easy. Like, that's not right. So you should make sure you try to act like Christ at all times, because you are a walking witness of Jesus Christ, and people are going to be watching you and taking note of how you act, and they're going to think that how you act is how Christians act, and if you act the wrong way, then that's not a good thing for them to know.
Going along with that, we're not saying it's not okay if you ever make a mistake. You're allowed to make mistakes, but own up to that.
Mm-hmm.
If somebody calls you out and they're like, well, on Saturday, July 15th at 5 p.m., you did so-and-so and so-and-so, be like, yeah, and that was a mistake, and that's my fault. But I've repented from that, and now I'm cleansed of that. If you own up to that, they're going to see that, and they're going to see Jesus in that, versus when you make a mistake and you just don't even worry about it.
Yeah, that's not right. Also, going along with that, make sure that whoever you're around, whether it be your friend or your enemy, someone that you don't like necessarily, or just a stranger, make sure that you're showing them Jesus and you're acting like Jesus would. If someone is sitting alone at lunch, you should invite them to sit with your friends, or you should bring your friends over to them and start talking to them, because that's what Jesus would have done. He would have talked to the people who don't necessarily fit in. And that's just so important to try to think about. I know that's so cliche, what would Jesus do? But you should really be constantly thinking about that. What would Jesus do in this situation? Because you don't know what these people's home lives are at these schools. Like, you need to be showing them Jesus, because you might be the only Jesus that they're going to get.
Yeah, for sure. And I think a lot of times, like, what comes to mind for me especially is like the special needs students. We had a fairly large special needs student group in our school when we were in high school especially, and I would always notice that, yeah, some popular people would, acknowledge them, but they weren't doing it with good intentions. They were like, they would give them high fives in the hallway, but then they would be like, oh my gosh, I gave so and so a high five. How funny is that? Like, no, make sure that if you see someone treating someone like that you go out to them and you're like, hey, I genuinely love and appreciate you, and I'm glad you're here. I hope you're having a good day. And it could be as simple as giving them a high five in the hallway and being like, love you, have a good day. Or like, Jesus, you don't even have to say you love them. Say Jesus loves you, because he does. Like, show them that, because people will see that through you, and then they'll start asking you more questions and being like, well, why'd you do that? Why'd you do so-and-so? And you'll be like, because I love Jesus. Let me tell you about Jesus. Tip number 9 is to make sure that you are prioritizing. This is like big pro-life tip.
Yeah.
Like,
Keep this in your brain files.
yes, file it, store it, like keep it on tab. Prioritize church and school. Make sure that if you're in something that meets after school, maybe they meet typically on Tuesdays and Thursdays, but maybe one Tuesday, like, it rained, or there's like some other function at the school and you can't meet, and they're like, oh, well, let's just meet on Wednesday. Make sure that you pipe up and you're like, no, actually, I have church on Wednesday. Or if they say, well, let's just meet on Sunday morning at like 9, be like, no, actually, I have church on Sunday morning. Like, make sure that you're prioritizing that. Now, I'm not saying you never will miss church because of something that you have to do for school. If something is required for school and you have to be present, or you have to like finish it and you haven't allotted your time correctly, then the occasional missing church is not going to kill you, and it's not like God is going to be like, you missed church that one Sunday of your senior year of high school, so you're not making it. Like, that's not it at all. Make sure though that you're standing up for yourself and you're not seeing church as this extra thing that you do, but as the most important part of your week, just as important as school. And along with that, make sure you're still making time for your quiet times. Make sure that even in all the hustle and bustle of the school year, and especially around like finals and exams and stuff like that, make sure that you're prioritizing time alone with Jesus. Even if you only have 5 minutes, do 5 minutes in the morning. Instead of putting on your makeup, take 5 minutes to sit down and be like, all right, God, show me what you want to tell me. Open your Bible and spend just 5 minutes with Him. Just 5 minutes is all you need. I mean, please do longer than that. But if you only have 5 minutes, take those 5 minutes and use them to study and to be in tune with the Lord so that you can be the hands and feet of Jesus, because those quiet times are going to help you and they're going to reflect your actions.
Also, to tag along with that, make sure that you're not using homework and schoolwork as an excuse of why you don't want to go to church.
Yeah.
Like, I remember in high school a lot of people being like, oh, I can't come to church on Wednesday nights because I'm taking French and it's just so hard and I just can't do it.
Shade me.
Oh, was it you? I'm sorry. I'm not meaning to throw shade at her, but I remember multiple people that would be like that.
It was just the French class because I took French after school, remember?
Oh, okay. Yeah,
Anyway.
but a lot of people are just like, no, I can't go to church because I have so much homework. And honestly, sometimes you have so much homework that you don't have time to go to the bathroom. I mean, that's ridiculous, but go to the bathroom. But like sometimes you're in those points where you have so much to do, you don't have time to do anything but do your homework. I hope you're not in that situation in high school, because then that's like child abuse or something, because that's like way too much. And in those instances, every once in a while, it's okay to miss church, but at the same time, you should make sure that church is on your top priority list, because it's a really big deal to be surrounded by people that will build you up in the faith. And just don't say, I'm not going to go to church this semester because this class is killing me. That's just not the mindset you should have. You should try your very hardest to get to church, even though sometimes you might not want to. You should try your very hardest.
And I think especially if you are having a class that is really, really difficult for you to get through, that should be a factor that encourages you to go to church. You should want to go to church because you're having a hard time. Because
that's how I feel at school.
Yeah, because like you're going to be surrounded by people who you can look at and be like, look, I have this class and it's really, really killing me and I'm really scared I'm not going to pass. And they're going to pray for you. They're going to lift you up. They're going to encourage you. They're going to take you to the altar and pray with you. Like, and they're going to be aware of that, and you're going to have an extra support system and you'll be more likely to succeed.
Yeah. Going along with that, we got our very last point, number 10, which I think is one of the most important, honestly.
Me too.
Is that you should surround yourself with Christian friends. Because it is so important. It is so important. So important to be surrounded by a support system, like she was saying, to help you get through school, because sometimes it's really stressful, sometimes it's harder. I feel like every single year you're in school it gets harder.
Oh, yes.
So it's really important to have those friends, to have those deep talks and deep conversations about faith and about church and about the Bible and all these things. It's so important to have friends that you can say those things with. And it's not saying that you shouldn't be friends with people who aren't Christians, because you should be friends with people who aren't Christians, but I would say that your very closest group, tight-knit friends should be Christians.
Yeah, and you want to have those people that if you're having a hard time, you can go to and you can be like, hey, look, I'm having a hard day, just pray for me. And they will, without even asking questions, without batting an eye, and they're not going to be like, what was praying? You know what I mean? Like,
I'm scared, I don't want to.
Yeah, you need to have people that are going to be there for you, and they're going to call you out, and they're going to hold you accountable for being a Christian and for holding those standards, and that's important. You want that.
Thank you guys so much for watching this video. We hope that you have benefited from it. These are things that we enjoy talking about, and we really wish that people would have told us these things when we were younger. So hopefully you really enjoy this content.
Yeah. Make sure that you guys like and comment on this video. Let us know if you agree with these things, if any of these things helped you, or if you have any extra tips for young students in school. Feel free to leave them below. Start a little commentary line in the comments. Make sure that you hit that bell, because you'll get a notification every time that we post a video, and we have some exciting new things coming up, so make sure that you like, subscribe, and comment.
Also, let us know if you have had any troubles in your school as a Christian, or if you have started a Bible study. We want to know what life is like in your school. We would be very interested to know your personal stories.
Yeah. So as far as next week's video is concerned, I will be talking about, well, I mean, we'll both be here, but I will mainly be talking about living life with a chronic illness. So I mentioned in our introduction video that I have a chronic illness, and I'm going to expound upon that, exactly what it is and how it affects my life. And Andrea is going to kind of talk about what it's like being a friend to someone with a chronic illness and how you can be a good support system. So look forward to that, and make sure that if you know anyone that has a chronic illness, that you send them to our channel next week, a week from today, so that they can watch this video.
Be there, be squared.
Ooh, yeah.
Bye, friends. I hate that. I'm so sorry. Tip number 7, make sure you invite people to church. 7?
Be respectful, and if they say,
I'm sorry. A gnat flew into me. I'm sorry. It like hit my upper lip. They're gonna be like, sorry, was it the gnat?
The gnat.